Belief will produce action. But action without faith will kill you.
Say that again, okay?
You remember the saying, let's say it like this, faith without works is dead.
To what extent are you familiar with Pastor Creflo? First, make sure you watch this all the way through before you respond. Pastor Creflo Dollar, a well-known televangelist and the founder of the non-denominational Christian World Changers Church International, has been a prominent figure in contemporary Christianity, primarily as a result of his influence on the prosperity gospel movement. He is known for his teaching that establishes a connection between faith and material success. The belief that faith, positive speech, and donations to religious causes can increase material wealth, improve physical well-being, and bring about spiritual blessings is the foundation of this movement. Despite the fact that Creflo Dollar's financial practices and extravagant lifestyle have garnered a significant amount of criticism over the years, there is a secret truth that needs to be revealed about him. This truth is hidden behind the scenes. Join us as we investigate the difficulties, including the controversies surrounding Pastor Creflo Dollar, a man whose message of prosperity and hope has inspired millions of people, but who is currently facing challenges that will define his legacy as the founder and senior pastor of WCCI. The teachings and leadership that Creflo Dollar has provided have elevated him to a prominent position within the prosperity gospel movement. He was born on January 28, 1962, and he is the founder and senior pastor of World Changers Church International, also known as WCCI, which is located in College Park, Georgia. He is also the senior pastor of World Changers Church, New York, as well as a number of fellowship churches located all over the United States and the world. Not only does WCCI have offices in South Africa, Canada, the United Kingdom, and India, but it also has offices in Australia, which serves the Asia-Pacific region. He empowers millions of people to experience God's grace, restoration, healing, and financial breakthrough by delivering straightforward biblical principles that they can apply in their day-to-day lives. He is recognized for his cutting-edge revelation and humorous, pragmatic approach. Dollar has hundreds of books, CDs, and DVDs that are distributed all over the world. He is also a highly sought-after conference speaker, a best-selling author, and a Bible teacher who is known all over the global community. His television show, Changing Your World, which has won multiple awards, is currently being broadcast on 6 continents and has been translated into 6 different languages. On a weekly basis, his teachings are transmitted to more than 2.7 billion homes around the world. Additionally, Dollar is the leader of the Creflo Dollar Ministerial Association, which was formerly known as International Covenant Ministries, Creflo Dollar Ministries, and Arrow Records. Who was he brought up by? Maintain your attention to find out. Church was the place where the Dollar was raised. His first experience with a conversion did not occur until the summer after he had completed his first year of college at West Georgia College. Even after going through this experience, he maintained his determination to pursue a career as a professional football player. He did not feel any pull towards a full-time ministry. His football career was cut short by an injury, and it wasn't until then that he started thinking about other possibilities. Dollar was awarded a Bachelor of Science degree in education in 1984, and he immediately began working as an educational therapist after receiving his degree. In the following year, he tied the knot with Taffy, with whom he would continue to have 5 children in the future. Dollar began to lead Bible studies among his fellow students while he was recovering from an injury he sustained while playing football. As a result, he became known as a teacher who was both very skilled and very charismatic. His Bible study was referred to as the World Changers Bible Study. In 1986, he had made up his mind that he would become a therapist. However, the Lord was calling him to join the ministry of preaching on a full-time basis. It was in 1986 when Dollar first started working on the World Changers Ministries Christian Center. Together with Taffy, he established the church and held the first worship service for the congregation in the cafeteria of Kathleen Mitchell Elementary School in College Park. There were 8 people present for the service. Following this, he renamed the ministry World Changers Church International, or WCCI, and relocated the congregation from the cafeteria to a chapel that was specifically designated for that purpose. Creflo also added a weekly radio broadcast and the television show Changing Your World, the turning point to his schedule, all of which included 4 services that were held every Sunday. On December 24, 1995, the World Convention Center of India, WCCI, relocated to its current location, which is the World Dome, a facility with 6,500 seats. According to the church, the nearly $20 million World Dome was constructed without the assistance of a bank. The congregation reported that it had approximately 30,000 members as of the year 2007, and that it had gross cash collections of approximately $70 million for the year 2006. Lowe's Paradise Theater in the Bronx was leased by Creflo Dollar Ministries in October 2012 for the purpose of establishing a new church location in the state of New York. Dollar is also involved in televangelism and makes presentations at conferences. He also writes about his gospel of wealth and his involvement in the field. Through its main campus, World Changers Church International serves close to 30,000 members on a weekly basis. Additionally, the church serves 6,000 members through an affiliated congregation in New York City, and thousands more members through its many satellite campuses located all over the United States. In the field of prosperity theology, Creflo Dollar is widely recognized as one of the most influential and successful teachers. Over the course of each weekend, he delivers live sermons to tens of thousands of individuals, and his Changing Your Word broadcast is broadcast to almost every nation on the planet. He has written several books that have been extremely successful, and he is the publisher of Change magazine, which has 100,000 subscribers. Every single week, he is heard by hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people all over the world. His voice is accessible to everyone. Before we move on to discuss dollar finance and the teachings of the prosperity gospel, let's first investigate and gain a deeper understanding of prosperity theology, including its criticisms and the origins of the doctrine. Prosperity theology. The prosperity gospel is a theologically conservative movement that is rapidly expanding and is frequently associated with Pentecostalism, evangelicalism, and charismatic Christianity. It places an emphasis on the ability of believers to transcend poverty or illness through devotion and positive confession. At best, it provides the poor with a means of imagining and reaching for better lives at times, accompanied by sound financial advice. At worst, it is criticized as predatory and manipulative, particularly when churches or pastors require heavy tithing at the same time. This gospel is popular among communities that are economically disadvantaged. It is possible that members of the socioeconomic elite are also drawn to the messages of the prosperity gospel. These messages affirm the religious and spiritual legitimacy of wealth accumulation and reinforce a worldview in which financial success is an indicator of moral soundness. Prosperity theology, sometimes referred to as the prosperity gospel, the health and wealth gospel, the gospel of success, seed faith gospel, faith movement, or word faith movement, is a religious belief among some charismatic Christians that financial blessing and physical well-being are always the will of God for them, and that faith, positive scriptural confession, and giving to charitable and religious causes will increase one's material wealth. In the eyes of many people, material success, particularly financial success, is evidence of divine grace, favor, and blessings. The doctrine of prosperity has been subjected to criticism from leaders of a variety of Christian denominations, including those belonging to Pentecostal and charismatic movements. These leaders argue that prosperity theology is irresponsible, that it encourages idolatry, and that it is in direct opposition to the Bible. Some interpretations of the prosperity theology have been criticized by both secular and Christian observers for being exploitative of those who are economically disadvantaged. There have been allegations of financial fraud leveled against some preachers, and the practices of some preachers have been the subject of scandal. The Bible is interpreted by proponents of prosperity theology as a contract covenant between God and human beings. If people have faith in God, then God will secure their safety and provide them with prosperity. The doctrine places an emphasis on the significance of personal empowerment and proposes that it is God's will for people to be blessed according to His will. Reconciliation with God is understood to include the alleviation of sickness and poverty, which are considered to be curses that can be broken through the power of grace and faith provided by the atonement. Prosperity theology entered the public consciousness for the first time in the United States during the healing revivals that occurred in the 1950s. There have been some commentators who have suggested that the New Thought movement, which began in the 19th century, is the source of its theological foundations. Later on, the teaching of prosperity played a significant role in the Word of Faith movement as well as telephone evangelism during the 1980s. In the 1990s, influential leaders in the charismatic movement and the Pentecostal movement in the United States adopted it, and since then, it has spread all over the world. David Oyedepo, Todd White, Benny Hinn, and E.W.B. Simpson is among the prominent leaders who have contributed to the development of prosperity theology. In addition to Kenyon, Oral Roberts, A. Allen, and Robert Tilton, T.T. Kenneth Hagin, Joseph Prince, L. Osborne, Joel Osteen, Creflo Dollar, Kenneth Copeland, Reverend Ike, and Jesse Duplantis are the individuals who are included in this group. It is important to note that prosperity theology has been subjected to a significant amount of criticism. Do not let this opportunity pass you by. Your curiosity will be satiated if you continue to watch. Criticism of the prosperity gospel. Mainstream evangelicalism has always been opposed to the concept of prosperity theology. This is due to the fact that heretical and prosperity ministries have frequently come into conflict with other Christian groups, including those that are part of the charismatic and Pentecostal movements. A number of critics, including the evangelical pastor Michael Catt, have argued that traditional Christian theology and prosperity theology share very few similarities. There have been prominent evangelical leaders who have harshly criticized the movement, including Rick Warren, Ben Witherington III, and Jerry Falwell. These leaders have sometimes referred to the movement as heretical. Warren contends that prosperity theology encourages the worship of money as an idol, while others contend that Jesus' teachings demonstrate a disdain for material wealth. Arkent Hughes makes a point of mentioning in his book, Mark, Jesus, Servant and Savior, that certain rabbis from the first century believed that material blessings were a manifestation of God's favor. He uses the statement made by Jesus in Mark 10:25, which states, "It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of God," as evidence to refute such a way of thinking. A number of other individuals who are opposed to the movement criticize the promises that its leaders have made, arguing that the leaders' promise of a comprehensive freedom from problems is irresponsible. Telecommunications evangelists are frequently accused of exploiting the faith of their audience members in order to enrich themselves through the receipt of substantial donations. Those who disagree with prosperity theology argue that it does not provide a sufficient explanation for the apostles' lack of wealth. Some theologians, for instance, are of the opinion that the life and writings of Paul the Apostle, who is thought to have endured a great deal of suffering during his ministry, are particularly in conflict with the doctrine of prosperity. The disagreement with fundamental Christian teachings is brought up by Kathleen Falsani, a writer who specializes in religion, in an opinion piece that was published in the Washington Post. Jesus was born into poverty, and he passed away in it. Throughout his time on earth, he made numerous statements emphasizing the significance of material prosperity and physical well-being. Anytime he brought up the topic of material wealth, it was almost always as part of a cautionary tale. In their book titled Health, Wealth, and Happiness, theologians David Jones and Russell Woodbridge provide a description of the doctrine as being of poor theological qualities. They give the impression that righteous living is not something that can be earned and that the Bible does not guarantee an easy-lived life. Their argument is that it is incompatible with the gospel of Jesus, and they suggest that the primary message of the gospel ought to be the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. Jones and Woodbridge regard the significance of Jesus as being of the utmost importance, and they criticize the prosperity gospel for putting an emphasis on human requirements rather than on Jesus. Jones argues that the Abrahamic covenant, which is God's promise to bless Abraham's descendants, should already apply to all Christians, and that this blessing is spiritual. In another article, Jones criticizes the prosperity theology interpretation of the Abrahamic covenant. In addition to this, he contends that those who advocate for the doctrine have a misunderstanding of the atonement, and he disagrees with their teaching that the death of Jesus removed both sin and poverty. He is of the opinion that this teaching is derived from an incorrect understanding of the life of Jesus. Taking into consideration the fact that Paul frequently instructed Christians to give up their material possessions, he criticizes John Avanzini's teaching that Jesus was wealthy as a misrepresentation. In spite of the fact that he acknowledges that generosity is a worthy act, he questions the reasons behind prosperity theology. He expresses his disapproval of the law of compensation, which asserts that when Christians give generously, God will give back even more in return. Instead, Jones cites the teachings of Jesus, which urge people to give without expecting anything in return. Jones and Woodbridge also point out that Jesus commanded his followers to concentrate on spiritual rewards, citing Matthew 6:19-20 as the source of this instruction. It is not appropriate to store treasures for yourself on earth. Rather, it is more appropriate to store treasures by yourself in heaven. The view of faith that the doctrine holds is criticized by Jones. In his opinion, it should not be viewed as a spiritual force for the purpose of acquiring material wealth. Rather, it should be regarded as a selfless acceptance of God, according to statements made by Apostle Dallin H. Oakes on April 20th. Those who adhere to the theology of prosperity are susceptible to being misled by an abundance of wealth. After that, he went on to say that the presence of wealth or a significant income is not a sign of heavenly favor, and that the absence of such things is not evidence of heavenly disfavor. In addition, he referred to the manner in which Jesus differentiated between the respective perspectives on money held by the young wealthy man in Mark 10 verses 17, 24, the Good Samaritan, and Judas Iscariot in his betrayal scenario. Oakes brought this section of his sermon to a close by emphasizing that the motivation behind all evil is not money, but rather the desire to acquire wealth. Within the same year, a well-known pastor and advocate for prosperity gospel, Creflo Dollar, initiated a fundraising campaign with the goal of purchasing a Gulfstream G650, which is valued at $65 million, to replace an older private jet. On August 16, 2015, John Oliver revealed that he had established his very own tax-exempt church, which he called Our Lady of Perpetual Exemption. This announcement was a satirical take on the concept of prosperity theology. In a lengthy segment, Oliver focused on what he characterized as the predatory behavior of televangelists who appeal for repeated gifts from people who are experiencing personal crises or financial distress. He also criticized the very lax requirements that are imposed by the United States tax law on entities that wish to obtain tax-exempt status as churches. In the end, Oliver stated that he would give any money that was collected by the church to Doctors Without Borders, as well as to the teachings of the prosperity gospel. The teachings of Dollar, which are known to be controversial, pertain to the doctrine of prosperity. His extravagant way of life has been a source of criticism for a very long time. He is the owner of 2 Rolls-Royce automobiles, a private jet, and high-end real estate, including a home in Atlanta that is worth $1 million, a home in Demarest, New Jersey, that is worth $2.5 million, and a home in Manhattan that he purchased for $2.5 million in 2006, which is equivalent to $3.5 million in 2023, and then sold for $3.5 million in 2012, which is equivalent to $4.98 million in 2023. Dollar has not shown any willingness to reveal his salary. Creflo Dollar Ministries was given a grade of F for financial transparency by the Ministry Watch organization. This was due to the fact that the organization did not disclose any financial information to an independent audit. Dollar was one of 6 televangelists who were the focus of an investigation that was conducted in 2007 by United States Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa, who served as the ranking member of the Senate Finance Committee with regard to the investigation. Grassley requested that Dollar's ministry make the information available by December 6, 2007, and asked for financial information in order to determine whether or not Dollar made any personal profit from the financial donations. During the course of the investigation, information was also requested from 5 additional televangelists, including Benny Hinn, Kenneth Copeland, Eddie Eldy specifically, Paula White, Joyce Meyer, and Long. Dollar contested the investigation, arguing that the Internal Revenue Service, IRS, is the appropriate government agency to investigate religious organizations and not the Committee on Finance. Due to the fact that Dollar and 3 other individuals did not cooperate, the investigation was completed in 2011 without any charges being brought against them. Over the course of his career, Dollar has produced a number of books and video recordings that emphasize the obligation that Christians have to pay tithes in places of worship. On the other hand, in July of 2022, he publicly retracted his views on tithing, admitting that he had misled people with these teachings. He stated that it was not biblical to tithe, but rather that it was up to individuals to offer according to their heart and ability. In response to these statements, Dollar was met with both praise and criticism. Misleading teaching, the prosperity gospel. Creflo Dollar is widely recognized as one of the most prominent advocates of the doctrine that has come to be known as the prosperity gospel. It is therefore the teaching of the doctrine that God has promised His people that they will be prosperous financially in this life, provided that the people of God would only take the necessary steps to claim it. This erroneous teaching, which originated in the United States of America, has since spread throughout the world, particularly in the emerging economies of the world. Dollar puts it all out there in a single Bible study. Your inheritance of wealth and riches is included in the spiritual blessings or spiritual things to which you are entitled because you are the righteousness of God. Ephesians chapter 1 verse 5 is where the Apostle Paul made his statement. According to verse 3 of Psalm 112, righteousness, wealth, and riches are all intertwined with one another. It is entirely within your rights to amass an abundance of material wealth, including clothing, jewelry, houses, automobiles, and money. It is wealth that not only satisfies your requirements, but also helps to disseminate the message of the gospel and fulfill the requirements of other people. As stated in the Bible, wealth is reserved for those who are righteous, according to Proverbs chapter 13 verse 22 of the New American Standard. On the other hand, it will continue to be stored until you come to claim it. Make your claim on it right away. According to verse 18 of Deuteronomy chapter 8, you have the ability to seize and command wealth and riches to come to you. Utilize this power by uttering words that are filled with faith on a daily basis and by taking actionable steps to eliminate debt entirely. You have the ability to bring spiritual blessings into existence, just like God does. It is important to keep in mind that faith speaks, while doubt remains silent. The act of planting seeds is what brings about this kind of prosperity. Therefore, an individual who desires to achieve financial prosperity must plant seeds of financial prosperity. It goes without saying that the most common way to fund such seeds is through a contribution to a ministry such as Dollars. Some people might say, "Oh God, I need money, the rent is due, the baby needs shoes, and what about my breakthrough?" But what about my breakthrough? How can you possibly anticipate a financial harvest if you have not yet planted the seeds of financial success? If you wanted to grow apples, would you plant cucumber seeds or pumpkins instead? It is not the case. Why then do you anticipate that you will experience an increase in your financial situation when you intentionally plant anything and everything other than what is required? You will plant the seed of hope, the seed of song, the seed of dance, and even the seed of claiming it. Not only are all of these things beneficial, but they are also ineffective when used on their own and without the appropriate seed. However, his career has not been devoid of difficulties and controversies over the years, just like the careers of many other public figures. Why are we being asked to take on these challenges? It would be unethical for you to skip out on this show. Maintain your attention to find out. The controversy surrounding Creflo, a dispute that he had with his daughter, who was then a teenager, led to him getting into legal trouble in the year 2012, which is one of the most notable events that took place in his personal life. A televangelist's daughter, who is 15 years old and the daughter of a megachurch pastor named Creflo Dollar Jr., told an emergency dispatcher that her father had punched and choked her. She also stated that she felt threatened in the house, and that this was not the first time that something like this had occurred. An audio recording of the 911 call reveals that she stated that she and her father had a disagreement. The argument occurred when her father refused to let her attend a party. At the conclusion of a brief investigation that took place at the residence of the Dollar family on Sandy Creek Road, deputies from the Fayette County Sheriff's Office arrested the Reverend, who was 50 years old, and charged him with simple battery, family violence, and cruelty to children. In the later hours of Friday morning, Dollar was released on a bond of $5,000. On Sunday, Dollar denied the allegations while speaking from the pulpit of his megachurch, World Changers Church International. He stated that everything is fine in the Dollar household and that he should not have been arrested in the first place, as reported by the American Journal of Criminal Justice. He stated that the abrasions that were observed on his daughter's neck were remnants from an eczema case that had occurred. In accordance with the incident report, Alexandria Dollar, who is 19 years old, reportedly informed the authorities that her younger sister was being truthful. She claimed that her father had placed both hands around her sister's neck and choked her for approximately 5 seconds. After that, he grabbed the 15-year-old by the shoulders and slapped her in the face until she was unconscious. As stated by the American Journal of Criminal Investigation, AJC, deputies stated in the incident report that Alexandria was required to alter her initial story because her parents were present outside with her while she was writing it. According to the report, after being separated from her parents, Alexandria produced a statement that was consistent with the account she had initially provided that she created. According to the Austin Journal-Constitution, Dollar stated that the incident was a part of the devil's plan to discredit his ministry. During his reading from Psalm 35 in the Old Testament, he stated that there are witnesses who testify against me who are malicious. They accuse me of committing crimes that I have no knowledge of. I pray that those who take pleasure in my suffering will be brought to shame and humiliation. Following his sermon in which he argued against tithing, other preachers in the United States have voiced their disapproval of Creflo Dollar. Dollar, who has been a proponent of tithing, also urged his congregation to get rid of the books, tapes, and videos that he had produced on the subject of tithing. The prosperity preacher admitted that he had been preaching the wrong gospel in regard to tithes. He emphasized that tithing is a teaching from the Old Testament and is no longer relevant for believers in the New Testament. Dollar, who made this statement during one of his Sunday sermons titled The Great Misunderstanding, cited Romans chapter 6 verse 14 in the Holy Bible to support his argument that Christians now live under grace rather than the laws of the Old Testament. You are not under the law, but you are under the grace, according to Romans 6:14. Sin will not have dominion over you because you are not under the law. He pointed out that you are not subject to laws but rather grace. However, he clarified to his congregation that he did not intend to imply that Christians should lessen the amount of money they give, despite the fact that he stated that tithing is something that is found in the Old Testament. In his train of thought, Dollar is reversing his course and going in a completely different direction. Years later, he was criticized for soliciting donations of $300 from each of his parishioners in order to purchase a Gulfstream G650 jet that cost $65 million for the purpose of conducting ministry overseas. Pastor Creflo Dollar, known for his teachings on prosperity and faith, revealed on *The Ricky Smiley Show* his battle with an aggressive form of prostate cancer. Following his diagnosis, Dollar chose to confine himself for 2 weeks, fasting, praying, and only informing his wife. Remarkably, when he returned to his doctor, there was no trace of cancer. He credits his recovery to his unwavering faith and the grace of God. His journey was not without setbacks. In 2021, he contracted a severe case of COVID-19, leading to blood clots in his lungs, and later endured shingles. These health challenges tested his faith but also strengthened his resolve. Dollar shared that he learned to lean fully on God's grace, referencing 2 Corinthians 12:9, where God tells Paul, "My grace is sufficient for you." In the midst of his illness, Dollar collaborated with a friend, Pastor John, who composed the song Greatest Power, inspired by Dollar's experiences. This journey of faith and healing highlighted Dollar's resilience as he continued to lead his ministry with tenacity, despite controversies surrounding his teachings and wealth. His influence has inspired millions worldwide to seek both spiritual and financial empowerment. What are your thoughts on Pastor Creflo Dollar's journey? Share your perspective below. Be sure to click the like button and subscribe to the channel. Click on the video that is going to be displayed on your screen before you leave.